Hey, you're listening to Sean of the South, and I'm your host tonight, Sean Dietrich, and we're coming to you live via the podcast, airwaves, and the radios all over this fine nation. These good people you see behind me here fixing to play music for you tonight are Sugar and the Mint, everybody. Sugar and the Mint.
Stopping me in every minute, 60 even seconds on the long hand. On the other hand, my memory is filled with tainted history, and all my future is to me is a record spinning on. Well, I'm not shedding blood or tears or worried about every fear. I'm just afraid that 10 years from today things will be the same. Things will be the same. Wake up and pray that I don't lose it on the first unlucky person that gets in my way. And I drink 1,000 cups of coffee, think about the new philosophy. Pretty girls walk up to scoff at me, then walk away. Well, I'm not shedding blood or tears or worried about every fear. I'm just afraid 10 years from today things will be the same. Things will be the same.
I'm going to read you a little bit of our mail tonight, a little bit of our mail sent in to us from readers and listeners all over the nation who have taken the time to listen to us on their car stereos or are trapped in nursing homes near a radio and cannot reach the dial. Our first letter comes to us tonight from Sherry Borson, Brownsville, Texas, via Carrollton, Georgia. Sean, I found you as I left Brownsville, Texas, to drive the 1,100 miles to reach the red dirt roads and kudzu-covered hometown of my childhood. I grew up the daughter of a Southern Baptist minister, and I knew you were my people when you mentioned pear salad, my daddy's favorite, possibly the most disgusting thing to me, but my daddy's favorite. In a life that's taken me to the prairies of Kansas, the mountains of Montana, and New Mexico, and finally to the deep south of Texas, in a place that looks far different than I imagined it might, I found myself nodding with your show and smiling in agreement and singing along to those red-backed hymnal songs as each episode played. So now I'm sitting on my parents' back porch, and there's rain falling on the tin roof, and there's a stray dog that became a pet here, all because of a woman who's patted out more biscuits than can be counted, who said it was going to be that way regarding the dog. I'm writing you, Sean, to thank you for narrating my journey back home. Signed, a new faithful follower, Sherry. Bill Sherbert, Bentonville, Arkansas. I live in the birthplace of Walmart, and sometimes I'm embarrassed to tell people that. I'll be truthful. People hear me say where I live and they think, yuck, gross, the corruption of corporate America. But Sean, I'm going to tell you, it ain't like that. My kin come from Bentonville, and we're a cool place. The sun comes up in the morning here and will take your breath away. It's beautiful, and it makes you feel small when you see it. Don't get me wrong, I do miss the old days. But I just wanted to let you know that you got a fan out here in Bentonville. Winona Carroll, Macon, Georgia. Sean, my mother is a saint, a real saint of the realest kind. She was walking along the street, and this guy asked for help from her last week. He just came right up to her. Now, she's confused about what he needed, but saints don't ask questions, so she just said, "What can I do for you?" He was dressed in a fancy suit, and he said to her, "I have a job interview in a few minutes. I've never had a fancy haircut in my life until now. I got my haircut yesterday, and the stylist fixed it up nice, but now I can't figure out how to do what she did, and my hair just looks stupid. Can you help me?" Sean, he had a bottle of hair product that his hairstylist had given him, and so my mother walked him into a Bed Bath & Beyond. She took him before the mirror, and she said, "Give me that bottle." She took 5 minutes styling his hair in front of that mirror like a pro, and I don't know if he got the job, but I will bet you $100 he did. Greg Starr, Salina, Kansas. I've been single for a long time, Sean. Too long. And except for my dogs, I pretty much live alone. I was at a dog park years ago when I met this girl there. She had 2 dogs she was training, and she seemed like she knew what she was doing. She had this electric collar on one of them, and she would give special treats when the dogs did whatever she told them to do. It was impressive, to say the least. I approached her, and I asked her how I could train my dogs to be like hers were. And so she took the time out of her training to teach me a few things. She taught them how to sit, and this was a big accomplishment for me and my dogs. We started meeting at the park a few times every week. She helped me train my dogs. She is the reason my dogs knew how to do anything besides jump and knock people down. To pay her back, I bought her things and put them in gift baskets, and I even baked her some things. I only know how to cook 2 things in the oven: sugar cookies and pound cake. But I finally worked up the courage, because I'm an easygoing guy. I finally worked up the courage to ask her out on a date. So fast forward to here. We've been married 9 months, and I am the luckiest man alive. But, Sean, I must say, living with 4 dogs in one house is a special form of clinical insanity. Dana Millage, Henderson, Nevada. I'm originally from South Carolina, and I miss my home so bad I can taste it. Yesterday, I met an old lady at work who had a southern accent, and I almost started crying when I heard her say the word y'all, because it sounded just the way I remember it sounding when I was growing up. People out here don't say it the same way, Sean. I've been away from home with my job for 16 years. I almost forgot what home even is. We had a long conversation, me and this woman, and I could swear while I talked to her my accent was coming back. Oh boy, oh boy. Anyway, maybe the old adage is true, Sean. There's no place like home. Dear Dana, I believe the old adage is true. Percy Montague, Auburn, Alabama. I went to the store a few days ago and I was walking along the aisle when I saw my ex-wife. She was walking with my cousin and they were tossing things into the same buggy. My cousin and I are good friends, and I was surprised he hadn't told me about this little extravaganza. But come to find out, my ex-wife had just gotten out of the hospital and she needed help picking up a few things. My cousin volunteered because they are in the same Bible study class together. I didn't even know she'd been to the hospital. And so I'm about to drop some things off at her house and a bouquet of flowers to tell her to get well soon. I believe in love, Sean, even to people who are harder to love than others. Sharon Brider, Houston, Texas. Nobody has a cure for old age, that's what my mama used to say, and she was good at getting old. Getting old is a skill, Sean, you know. Some people get old and they hate it, but others are excellent at it, and it don't hinder them at all. It just makes them better, and I guess that's the difference between some people, just like the difference between vinegar and wine. Some things get more delicious, other things sour. I want to be like my mother. I really do. And I'm 69 years old today while I write this to you. I will be 70, and I never thought I would ever feel like 70 wasn't old, but I do. I feel like this is just the beginning. I am believing in faith that this is only middle-aged. So I hope God is listening to me when I say I expect to live until 140. This letter comes from somebody who calls himself Frieda with natural curly hair from Nashville, Tennessee. Sean, I moved to Nashville because I was 17 and I had this dream that I'd be a country singer. What girl doesn't want to grow up to be the next Loretta Lynn? I know I did. Now I believed I had the full package. I thought I had the looks. I thought I had the talent. But boy, was I wrong. I fell so flat on my face it wasn't even funny. I mean, in Nashville it's all about who you know, not what you can do. And I learned this the hard way. And even if it were about what you could do in this town, the truth is, Sean, I learned that I can't really do it as well as I thought I could. And I came to this realization, and I finally accepted I ain't the world's greatest singer, and I'm not the world's best looking girl. I'm just average looking, but I'm nice and I'm kind. I started waiting tables and I was completely depressed about my situation in life. I thought about going home to Arkansas, tucking my tail, and starting over again back home. But this guy and I hit it off. We met by chance through a mutual friend, and he was a maintenance man in a church nearby. He invited me to church with him, and I was like, I don't think so. But somewhere along the line, I changed my mind, and I went to church with him. And then after church, I went to lunch with him. And then after lunch, we spent the whole day together. To make a long story short, since that Sunday, we've never spent more than a few days apart. The day of our wedding was our 10-month anniversary of even knowing each other. While I write this to you, I'm grateful. We have been married 12 years on the 8th of November. And I just want to say that not all dreams that you have are the right ones, but don't worry, because there's something new around the corner that you are gonna like. And that's letters from our listeners. We're gonna have another tune here from Sugar and the Mint.
When a woman's in trouble,
Sugar in the mint, everybody. Sugar in the mint. November came with a giant gust of cold air like wind from a leaf blower blowing through the longleaf pine forests in our town all the way to the bay, the Choctawhatchee Bay. It was so cold. Our temperature went from 72 degrees down to 52 degrees in one night. 52 degrees to a person from South Alabama, Northwest Florida. In this part of the world, 52 degrees, they say, at least I've heard from my buddy, that this is the temperature they keep the bodies at the morgue at, because a southerner decays at a higher temperature than folks from the rest of the world, say Nebraskans. Yes, 52 degrees is too cold. It's too cold. It's not usual for this time of year in November. In November we have what we call the harvest moon hanging high above the world. And it signals to us that Thanksgiving is on its way, that wonderful time of year when you can all sit around a loved one's supper table and pretend not to hate each other. It's a beautiful time of year, and normally the temperature down here is about 68 degrees. If you ask me, it's the perfect temperature for human life, the perfect temperature. This is why this time of year, Randolph Willard gathers up about 22 men together to take them to his cabin on the Choctawhatchee Bay, just on the Black Creek area. And he has a full weekend of fun, He has hunting, fishing, and they deep fry various parts of various animals in saturated fat and peanut oil. And they gather together inside this little primitive cabin without electricity or water. And by lantern light, they play poker with a deck of cards that Mr. Ralph Willard has had since 1948, a deck of cards that he inherited from his brother who was in the Navy, that had pictures on the back that were not of the apostles. You get my drift. They gather together and they tell jokes. Old men are joke tellers and storytellers, and they'll tell all sorts of stories. I'd only been on that trip with him one time. You could only get invited to his cabin if you knew somebody. You could not go unless you knew somebody. And so I was invited with my cousin Ed Lee to go to the cabin for the weekend, and I felt like I really was somebody, because once you ascend out of oblivion where you are uncool into the world of people who are cool, you feel like you've really done something with your life. You don't even need to complete 9th and 10th grade. You can just call it right here. You are at the apex of your existence. Men gather around that table and they tell stories. They have cigarettes dangling out their mouths. In the pantry at this cabin, there was all sorts of old man food lining the shelves. Sardines packed in mustard sauce. And these old men would get these sardines and just place them on white bunny bread. This the stinkiest sandwich you ever seen. One man brought Limburger cheese and did not bother to refrigerate it. It came wrapped in a little piece of foil, and whenever he'd unwrap that foil, it smelled like somebody had really done something bad in their pants. The old men, they love stinky food because, I assume, it's because they've just lost their taste buds, and it takes more to stimulate their taste buds than it used to. I watched Brother Jim make himself a tomato sandwich, which in our part of the world is just one very fatly sliced homegrown tomato. You cannot make a tomato sandwich without a homegrown tomato. You slice it about as thick as your thumb, and you place it on white bunny colonial or sunbeam bread. No other bread will do. And then you slather it with either Duke's or Blue Plate mayonnaise. at least 2 inches worth of mayonnaise, and then you place these 2 slices of bread together until the tomatoes are about to slip and slide out. You eat this sandwich, and if you are eating it and you are not wearing half of it on your shirt by the time you're done, you didn't do it right. I watched him make this sandwich, Brother Jim, and he got a little salt and pepper shaker. And he salted them tomatoes, and then he got the pepper shaker and he just started shaking upside down, and this little pile of pepper began to grow like a small anthill. I'd never seen anybody use so much pepper in all their life. I looked at Brother Jim, I said, "Why are you using so much pepper like that?" He said, "Well, hadn't you heard?" I said, "I don't guess I had." He said, "Oh, doctors, they've been doing research on pepper. They say that pepper will keep you younger longer and make you a wonderful lover." Since then, he'd been eating pepper on all his food, and after that, 22 men decided they would start eating pepper on all their food. That table in that cabin's a glorious place to be. There's nothing finer than listening to old men tell stories. Mr. Randolph Willard was fueling the stories. He was the facilitator since this was his cabin. It's been in his family for 89 years. 89 years. And the first question came from a man who'd been invited to the cabin. He's from Pennsylvania, a banker of some kind. And he said, "I heard your bay is filled with alligators." And the men at the table laughed. Randolph Willard looked at him and said, "Alligators? Lord, no. This is a brackish water bay, sure, but we don't got no alligators. Alligators are more mid-Florida than South Florida. I mean, they're around here, but they're very rare." He says, "You won't find an alligator in that bay. I've been fishing in that bay since I was just a little boy. And my father's been fishing in that bay since he was a little boy. And my grandfather and my granddaddy's granddaddy's granddaddy, and we ain't never seen no gator." The banker said, "Well, I heard that there was one caught here, just a few years ago." He said, No. He said, "I heard that story too." He says, "But nobody who lives here put any stock in that." And they told jokes. I love to hear old men tell jokes. They got the best jokes. Brother Dave said his old standby joke that everybody's tired of hearing about the doctor. He said, "Hey, you hear about the fellow who went to the doctor?" And all the men just kind of roll their eyes. They know what's coming next. He said, "Oh, yeah, he went to the doctor. The doctor said, 'Boy, I got good news and I got bad news.' And the man said, 'You do?' He said, 'Well, give me the bad news first.' He said, 'Okay, son, okay. Well, I hate to tell you that we amputated the wrong leg during your procedure.' The man just was shocked. He said, 'Okay, well, what's the good news, Doc?' He said, 'Well, good news is we found out that your other leg don't need amputating after all.' And the men are all obliged to laugh, so 22 men offer Southern Baptist courtesy laughs. These are the kind of laughs that you hear on the local news when anchormen are bantering with their co-anchor. It's a artificial laugh. It sounds more like play acting. It's not real. But the jokes at the table started flowing like wine, because once one old man tells a joke, you can do anything. You can tell a story, you can tell a joke, but the unspoken rule among old men is that it must be funny. Now, these are the kind of men that I learned how to tell stories from. I learned how to tell stories from men with white hair and lines on their face and big noses and big ears, because like my Uncle Jether used to say, the only thing that stops growing on a man is his dignity. Men with fleshy faces and meaty hands who can tie a fisherman's knot. These are good men with good stories, like the story about the man who went to heaven with his wife. Went to heaven, they were standing in the clouds with St. Peter, and St. Peter came along. He said, "All right, men, all the men who come to heaven here and died, I want all the men who wore the pants in their family to stand over here in this line right over here. And I want all the men who was henpecked by their wives to stand over here in this line over here. Single file line now, boys. And St. Peter was watching the whole process happen, and over on one side where the men had worn the pants in their family, there was only one man standing in line. And over on the other henpecked section, there were more men than the eye could see. St. Peter walked up to that man in that section, that lonesome man, and he said, I want to shake your hand for being a strong male in your household. And the man said, you want to what? I'm only standing here because my wife told me to stand here. Oh, that one hit like an atom bomb around that old table. That one hit like an atom bomb. Men love jokes. They love jokes and they love funny stories. We went to bed that night. My cousin Ed Lee and I, we laid on that bunk, and there was a lantern light beside us, and I was reading a little bit. My cousin Ed Lee said, could you turn that thing off? I'm trying to sleep. He said, what are you reading anyway? It's late at night. I said, I'm reading a joke book. He said, why are you reading a joke book? I said, because I need to be able to keep up with these old boys. I don't have enough jokes. You see, you got to really commit a joke to memory in our culture. You can't recite it half-heartedly. You've got to be able to really commit to it and know it inside and out and tell it. You got to know the joke, like the joke about the Baptist minister who formed a bowling team. He called them the Holy Rollers. Well, I didn't say I memorized good jokes. I just said I memorized jokes. Next morning, Randolph Willard woke everybody up, and bright and early, the sun was just beginning to peek above them longleaf pines. Those tall, stately trees are the trees my ancestors. They stand in the distance, poised against the pink sky of morning, and their furry tops make them look like elders looking down upon us. The longleaf pines are the South in a nutshell. I love these trees. I got up early. I walked out of that cabin onto that porch, and I watched the sunset or the sunrise happen with a cup of coffee in my hands, a tin mug of coffee. And I sipped it. Oh, it was gorgeous. And the men gathered on the porch, and they said, all right, we're going to go fishing. And so we all got dressed, put on our boots, and we hiked through the weeds toward a little fishing spot on the Black Creek Canal that leads into the Choctawhatchee Bay. I remember fishing this spot when I was a little bitty boy with my cousin Ed Lee. We tried once to make fishing poles out of river cane. And we took an old reel from an old antique rod and reel we'd gotten from his mother's attic, and we had attached it to them river cane poles, and we had gotten an old hanger, and we'd made eyelets which we attached to the river cane pole, and we attached with nylon threading, and we went down to the creek when we was little, and we fished. And the first fish we caught weighed about 0.775 pounds, and it broke the dadgum rod. 22 men, we were walking down this little single-lane path which had been worn down by years and years of men's boots trampling the grass. And we got to the little spot where we was all supposed to be fishing. 22 men, stately men, old men, and a few young men like my cousin Ed Lee and myself. And we all cast out into the water. It was wonderful. There was a little radio playing, a transistor radio that Mr. Randolph Willard had brought with him. It was playing Hank Williams songs like your cheating heart will make you weep. You cry and cry and try to sleep, but sleep won't come the whole night through. Your cheating heart will tell on you. We all asked Randolph Willard why he was listening to this kind of music, especially when he was a Southern Baptist deacon. He said, well, I'm glad you asked that, he said, but I love Hank Sr., and this is the only weekend out of the year where I can listen to this music. You see, the Southern Baptist deacons, they're righteous men righteous men who have never looked sideways at a woman, and they've signed contracts with our little church that say they will not smoke, drink, cuss, or smile at anybody who does. And so they are the stoics of our society. They are men who, truth be told, if you visit their house, they do not keep their beer in the house, they keep it in the barn refrigerator. We heard all them good Hank Williams songs. We heard, I got a feeling called the blues, oh Lord, since my baby said goodbye. Lord, I don't know what I will do. All I do was sit and sigh, oh Lord, that last long day she said goodbye. Well, Lord, I thought I would cry. She'll do me, she'll do you, she's got that kind of loving. Oh, Lord, I love to hear her when she calls me sweet and dear. Such a beautiful dream. And Brother Randolph Willard was standing on the shore and he was just singing along with it. He sounded like a Labrador with a chest cold. And that music just kind of carried across the surface of the water. But it was interrupted and we heard something. We heard a splashing sound. Randolph Willard went over to that radio and he turned it off, clicked it off. The music stopped. And all the men, 22 men, were listening to the splashing sound. It got a little bit closer. We looked into the distance and we could see a collection of women, maybe 15 or 16 elderly women. These were women with large frames, large bosoms, and they were wading into the water in their one-piece bathing suits. Randolph Willard looked at his friend, Brother Jim, who was standing right near Ed Lee and I, and he said, my God, I forgot. The Methodist Women's Bible Study has rented Miss Wilson's cabin for the weekend retreat. And so 22 men at the command of Randolph Willard ducked down into the brush. We ducked all the way down so that the grass was over our heads and they couldn't see us. And Brother Randolph Willard was smiling. He knew about this Methodist Women's group that came out of Andalusia. The Methodist Women's group was called or nicknamed SHARP, which was short for Sincerely Happy and Retired Persons. And the women were splashing in the water. Randolph Willard used his hands to part the grass and look at them. We were quiet. And we heard one of them ladies say, her voice carried across the water, a Methodist voice of regality and sophistication. She said, you know, it's been about 30 years since I've been skinny dipping. Randolph Willard looked at us, and his eyes got as big as truck tires. Another woman, she looked at that woman and she said, skinny dipping? Well, now there's an idea. Another woman said, well, we're all alone out here. She said, you think anybody'd see? Well, I don't know. But before they could finish their conversation, one of the women had already removed her bathing suit, and it was the biggest brassiere I have ever seen in my entire life. My cousin Ed Lee looked at me and he said, oh my God. And 22 men with fishing rods covered their eyes and covered their heads, and there was light giggling flowing among us. Yes, sir, light giggling turned into stronger giggling, but we were quiet for the most part. Brother Randolph Willard, my God, his face was about as red as a plum. And he said, y'all wait here, I got an idea. Brother Jim said, what are you doing? You can't get up there and do nothing, they'll see you. He said, just hang on. Randolph Willard picked up his 5-gallon bait bucket, walked along that shore carrying that white bait bucket just as easy as you please, swinging it along, singing a song, whistling. And he finally approached them ladies And he said, well, morning, ladies, good morning. And the sea of Methodist women bobbing in the water just looked at him. And one woman said, leave us alone, please, sir. He said, oh, leave you alone, huh? Well, my goodness, what are all these clothes doing here on the shore? What are all these one-piece, my good, why are you ladies skinny dipping? And the women, they kind of got a little bit lower in the water so that the water came up to their noses. If they could have gotten all the way under, I bet they would have. One woman said, please leave us alone, sir, please. He said, skinny dipping, my goodness, I ain't done that since I was just a young. One woman said, look, we know what you're trying to do. We know what you're trying to do, Randolph, but it ain't gonna work. There ain't nothing you can do that's gonna get us out of this bay water here. He said, oh, ladies, listen, and I'm a Baptist deacon. I got a family back at home. I got me a wife, 2 kids. I don't want to see you in your birthday suit. I don't want to see it. And I wouldn't do anything to tarnish your lovely, lovely spiritualism this weekend. They said, well, then fine. What are you doing here? He said, well, Randolph held his white bait bucket high into the air, and he said, ladies, don't mind me. Stay right where you are. I just came down here this morning to feed the gators. Hey, thanks for having me this evening. It's been a wonderful pleasure. I appreciate it very much. Appreciate it very much. Hey, thanks for listening to Sean of the South. I've been your host today, Sean Dietrich, and man, it's been a bona fide pleasure, if I do say so myself. Hope you join us next week, and perhaps even a week after that if you ain't got nothing going on. And if you do, well, we don't mind waiting. That stunning music you heard behind me today was the progressive bluegrass music of Sugar and the Mint. These guys have shared the bill with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Emmylou Harris, the Punch Brothers, Tommy Emmanuel, the Steep Canyon Rangers, and the Sam Bush Band, just to name a few. Their first album, Grape Flavored, in 2017 demonstrated to the world their lovely harmonies and their vocal prowess and lyrical compositions. To find anything more about what they do, check them out at sugarandthemint.com or check them out on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, or the bookstores. Look at their albums, Just Past Midnight or Grape Flavored, and do yourself a favor and get them today. To find anything more about what I do, you can visit SeanoftheSouthShow.com, and there you can find an archive section with our past episodes, the good ones, the mediocre ones, and even the flops. And while you're there, I hope you take the time to drop me a line, because I love to hear from my friends. Tell me about your birthday announcements, wedding invitations, anniversaries, ice cream socials, and church potlucks, and I'll do my best to read them over the air, because I love to do that sort of stuff for my friends. And speaking of friends, how is it that one careless match can start a forest fire, but it takes a whole dadgum box to start one measly campfire? Adios.